We live in a world that rewards exposure. Share your breakfast. Post your heartbreak. Announce every minor success. Update the world about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and who you're doing it with. But here's the paradox. The more we share, the less we actually connect. The most powerful things in life, your peace, your growth, your relationships, your vision, are built in silence, not secrecy. Silence. There is a difference. Secrecy is rooted in fear. Silence is rooted in strength. When you share your personal life with everyone, you give away control of the narrative, and worse, you open the door for the wrong voices to influence your direction. The truth is, most people don't care about your personal life the way you hope they would. Some want to know out of curiosity, others out of judgment, and a few out of love. But the ones who love you, truly love you, don't need a post or an announcement. They already know, they already feel it. Your personal life is not content, it's not public property, it's sacred ground. The most dangerous thing you can do is hand the steering wheel of your inner world to someone who hasn't earned the right to hold it. Think about it. The people who are building the deepest, strongest, most meaningful lives, they're not broadcasting every move. They're not explaining their relationships. They're not justifying their healing process. They're doing the work quietly, because transformation doesn't need applause. We've been taught that transparency equals authenticity, but that's only half the truth. Authenticity means being real. Transparency means being open. You can be real without being open with everyone. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your inner life. When you share too much too soon, you set yourself up for disappointment. When you keep certain things close, you give them room to grow without interference. We often confuse privacy with secrecy, assuming that when someone keeps things to themselves, they must be hiding something. But that assumption is built on insecurity and misunderstanding. Privacy and secrecy are not the same. Secrecy is fueled by fear, shame, or guilt. It's when you hide things because you're afraid of judgment or consequence. Privacy, on the other hand, is born out of clarity and self-respect. It's a conscious decision to protect something valuable, not because it's wrong, but because it's sacred. There's power in keeping certain things to yourself, not because you're ashamed, but because you understand their importance. Not everything has to be shared to be real. Not everything has to be explained to be valid. Some things are simply yours. Your healing, your progress, your personal relationships, your dreams that are still unfolding. These things deserve to be protected from noise, comparison, and the chaos of opinions. When you live in a culture that rewards oversharing, choosing privacy feels rebellious. You'll be questioned for not posting every detail. You'll be misunderstood for not explaining your choices. But real peace comes when you no longer feel the need to defend your life. You stop giving out access to people who haven't earned the right to your story. You stop inviting in judgment by oversharing your process. Privacy is a filter. It tells the world, this is mine. You don't get to shape it. You don't get to twist it. You don't get to weigh in. It keeps the focus where it belongs, on the life you're building, not the performance you're presenting. And in a world obsessed with performing, privacy is your protection. Think about your closest relationships. The most meaningful moments aren't the ones you broadcast to the world. They're the quiet conversations, the shared silence, the inside jokes that no one else understands. That intimacy is strengthened by its privacy. It grows not because everyone knows about it, but because it's shielded from unnecessary exposure. The same goes for your growth. The early stages of change are fragile. When you start becoming someone new, more disciplined, more grounded, more intentional, that version of you is still forming. If you share too much too soon, you invite people to judge a version of you that isn't finished yet. And the worst thing you can do is let outside voices influence an inside transformation. Privacy gives you the freedom to evolve without interference. You are not obligated to narrate your journey for others to understand it. You don't need approval to make your life meaningful. Privacy is the quiet confidence that says, I know who I am. I don't need you to validate it. And ironically, the more private you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. People will see the results of your peace, your growth, your discipline, and they'll wonder how you did it. But you won't need to explain, because the proof will be in your life. There's a quiet kind of power in being unbothered by the need to be seen, in doing the work in silence, in building something real without the pressure of performance. Because at the end of the day, the things that matter most, your values, your relationships, your purpose, aren't meant for everyone. They're meant for you and the few who've earned access. So no, privacy isn't about hiding. It's about honor. It's about recognizing that your life is not a spectacle, not a brand, not a show. It's a sacred process. And when you start treating it like that, you become more grounded, more focused, and more free. Not everything needs to be public to be powerful. Not everything needs to be posted to be real. Privacy is not silence out of fear. It is silence out of strength. Not everyone deserves access to your life, your thoughts, your journey, or your energy. And the sooner you understand that, the freer you become. We live in an age where boundaries are constantly blurred. Social media has made it seem normal, even necessary, to open your life up to everyone. Strangers comment on your relationships. Acquaintances form opinions about your healing. People you barely know feel entitled to your inner world. And we allow it not because we want to, but because we haven't been taught to protect our peace. Here's the truth. Access is a privilege, not a right. Just because someone is curious doesn't mean they deserve an answer. Just because they knew you at one point in your life doesn't mean they have a place in your current one. Growth means learning to be intentional about who gets a seat at your table. Not out of arrogance, but out of wisdom. Because when you give too many people access, you end up carrying too many opinions, and those opinions begin to dilute your own voice. Your peace should not be a public discussion. Your healing is not a community project. Your transformation is not something that requires approval or applause. When you're on a journey of becoming, of rediscovering who you are and what you value, the last thing you need is outside noise interrupting your clarity. People project. They judge from their level of understanding. They speak from their wounds, not your reality. And if you aren't careful, you'll start shrinking yourself to fit their expectations. Not everyone has the emotional maturity to handle your vulnerability. Some will misuse your openness for gossip, for judgment, or for their own gain. Some will pretend to listen, but they'll only hear enough to find flaws. Others will act like they support you, when in reality, they're hoping you'll fail, so they feel better about staying stuck. This is why discernment is essential. You don't need more people in your life. You need the right people, the ones who see your potential without needing every detail, the ones who respect your boundaries, not resent them. Think about the strongest people you know. They aren't loud. They aren't broadcasting every detail. They're selective, focused, rooted, because they've learned that too much access leads to too much interference. They protect their energy the way others protect their wealth, carefully and intentionally. They understand that the more you give away without thought, the more you risk losing your sense of direction. Access isn't just physical, it's emotional, mental, spiritual. Every time you explain yourself to someone who doesn't truly care, you drain a little more of your own power. Every time you open up to someone who hasn't earned your trust, you chip away at your own self-respect. It's not about building walls, it's about building filters. Not everyone gets to see the real you. Not everyone gets to know what keeps you up at night, what inspires you, what you're working on behind the scenes. That's sacred space. That's soul territory. You are not a product. You're not here to be consumed, commented on, or dissected. You are a human being navigating life just like everyone else. And you have every right to protect your journey, to choose who walks beside you, to be selective with your time, your truth, your love. So stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Stop giving energy to those who only take. Start preserving your power. Start honoring your own evolution. The right people won't need constant access to validate your worth. They'll respect the distance. They'll trust the process. They'll know that even in silence, you are growing. Even in privacy, you are becoming, because not everyone deserves access to your life. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for keeping it that way. Oversharing is often mistaken for vulnerability. But in reality, it can be a disguised cry for connection, approval, or validation. In a culture that rewards constant exposure, we're subtly conditioned to believe that telling more, showing more, and explaining more somehow makes us more authentic. But true authenticity isn't about revealing everything. It's about knowing what to reveal, when, and to whom. When you overshare, especially with people who haven't earned the right to your story, you begin to blur the very lines that protect your peace, your growth, and your identity. Boundaries exist to protect your emotional and mental well-being. They are not walls to keep people out. They are gates that determine who gets to come in, how far they get to go, and what parts of you they get to experience. Oversharing is when you swing that gate open, without checking who's at the door. It invites people into spaces of your life they're not qualified to hold, and when things go wrong, you end up feeling exposed, judged, or even betrayed. That's not vulnerability, that's unfiltered access, without discernment. When you share too much too quickly, you give away your power. You allow others to interpret, misinterpret, or manipulate your truth. You hand over your story without realizing how sacred it is. And what often happens is that people start feeling entitled to more. If you're always talking about your personal life, your struggles, your goals, your relationships, people begin to expect that level of openness all the time. And when you finally try to set a boundary, it feels like a withdrawal. You suddenly appear distant or different, not because you've changed for the worse, but because you're trying to reclaim what was never meant to be fully public. Oversharing also prevents you from developing the inner muscle of self-validation. When you constantly share your struggles or milestones for public reaction, you start relying on external responses to measure your worth or progress. You're unknowingly handing over your emotional thermostat to people who may not care, may not understand, or worse, may not want to see you grow. This weakens your ability to stand firm in your own truth without needing applause or agreement. There's a quiet dignity in restraint. When you learn to hold certain things close, not out of fear but out of self-respect, you start to realize that privacy breeds strength. It gives you space to process your experiences without distortion. It allows you to feel deeply, evolve silently, and move forward on your own terms. Every part of your life doesn't need an audience. Every lesson doesn't need to be taught through an Instagram post or a caption. Some wisdom is meant to live in your bones, not on your timeline. It's easy to overshare when you're searching for connection. Pain often makes us talk more. Fear makes us want to be seen. But not everyone is safe. Not everyone will hold your story gently. Some people will use your honesty as ammunition later. Others will take your vulnerability and turn it into gossip. That's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to recognize the risks and protect yourself accordingly. Strong boundaries say, this part of me is mine. I will share it when it's ready, if it's necessary, and only with people who've earned the right to hear it. This is not cold. This is not closed off. It's intentional, it's wise, and it's powerful. You don't owe the world your raw, unfiltered self. You don't have to bleed in front of everyone to prove you're human. The most confident, grounded people you'll ever meet are the ones who know how to hold themselves quietly. They speak when it matters. They share when it's safe. They guard their peace, like it's gold. Because it is. So let go of the need to overshare. Let go of the need to constantly explain. Create space in your life that is just for you. That is where real power lives. And that is where boundaries become not just lines, but freedom. Authenticity is often misunderstood. We're told that being real means being fully open, telling everything, and laying all our thoughts and emotions bare for the world to see. But that's not authenticity. That's unfiltered exposure. Authenticity is about alignment. It's when your actions, values, and words reflect who you are at your core. Transparency, on the other hand, is the choice to reveal specific things. And here's the truth most people miss. You can be authentic without being transparent. You can be real without revealing everything. There's this growing pressure to always be transparent, especially in a world where everyone seems to be broadcasting their lives. But just because someone shares everything doesn't make them more honest. It might make them more visible, more exposed, but not necessarily more authentic. Being transparent with the wrong people, or in the wrong context, can leave you vulnerable, misunderstood, and even hurt. And ironically, the need to be overly transparent can come from a place of insecurity rather than strength, a craving for validation, attention, or affirmation. Authenticity doesn't mean saying every thought out loud or broadcasting your personal life. It means your private and public self are aligned. It means your values guide your choices. It means you act with integrity, whether anyone is watching or not. It's possible to be authentic and still keep certain parts of your life sacred, private, and unspoken. In fact, the more grounded you are in who you are, the less you feel the need to explain it to everyone. People often mistake mystery for deception. But there's nothing dishonest about choosing not to share every detail of your journey. Just because you withhold something doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're protecting. There's a difference between being fake and being selective. Authentic people don't reveal everything. They reveal what is necessary, when it is meaningful, and to whom it matters. That's wisdom. When you know who you are,
you stop needing to prove it. You stop needing others to approve, to understand, or to agree. That inner clarity frees you from the pressure to explain your past, defend your decisions, or justify your boundaries. You don't owe anyone your story just to appear authentic. You don't have to share your pain for it to be real. You don't have to display your struggles to prove you've grown. What makes someone authentic is not what they reveal, it's how they live. Are they consistent? Are they kind when no one's watching? Do they live in alignment with their principles? Do their actions match their words? That's what authenticity looks like. It's found in behavior, not just confession. It's found in presence, not performance. Transparency can be powerful when used wisely. It can foster connection, build trust, and create meaningful dialogue. But it has to be intentional. It has to come from a place of security, not desperation. Oversharing, in the name of being real, often leaves people feeling empty afterward, especially when the response doesn't meet their expectations. Authenticity, by contrast, leaves you centered, because it's not about reaction. It's about truth. In your relationships, at work, online, wherever you go, you get to choose how much you share. And that choice does not make you more or less authentic. It makes you self-aware. It means you're not giving in to the pressure to perform. It means you've decided that your inner world isn't up for public consumption. The most powerful people are often the most private. They don't need to broadcast who they are, because it's felt in their presence, in their discipline, in their peace. They don't talk about everything, but everything they do say carries weight, because it's real and it's theirs. So let go of the idea that authenticity requires full exposure. Let go of the belief that to be real, you have to be transparent with everyone. The truth is, your authenticity shines the brightest when you are grounded in who you are, even when no one else sees it. Growth rarely announces itself. It doesn't come with fireworks, applause, or public recognition. In fact, the most powerful growth often happens in the quiet behind closed doors, away from the spotlight and far from the noise of the world. It unfolds slowly, subtly, and silently. And because it's not loud, most people miss it. But that doesn't make it any less real. In fact, it's in those quiet moments of reflection, discipline, and discomfort where true transformation takes root. We're conditioned to believe that growth should be visible, that if people don't see it, it doesn't count. So we post about our goals, announce our healing, and publicize our changes. We hope others will validate our process. But the truth is, real growth doesn't need validation. It just needs time, space, and intention. The deepest changes are the ones that begin in solitude, when you choose to face yourself without distractions, without performance, and without pretending. Growth in the quiet looks like deciding not to respond the way you used to. It's choosing patience over impulse, silence over arguing, focus over attention. No one sees those decisions, no one claps for them, but they're the ones that matter. It's in the quiet that you start to shed old patterns, break internal cycles, and build a new mindset. Those moments, when no one's watching, are the ones that define who you're becoming. Silence has a way of teaching you things noise never will. When you step away from the constant input, the opinions, the comparisons, the chatter, you finally start to hear your own voice. You begin to understand your values, your triggers, your wounds. You start confronting your fears instead of avoiding them. You begin to ask yourself hard questions. Who am I without the applause? Who am I when no one is validating my choices? Who am I when it's just me, my thoughts, and my growth? The world often praises productivity over stillness. But stillness is where clarity lives. Stillness is where healing happens. It's where your mind slows down enough for your heart to catch up. In that quiet space, you begin to see what's truly important. You start to let go, not just of people or habits, but of illusions, of unrealistic expectations, of who you thought you had to be. And this is where many people get it wrong. They mistake stillness for stagnation. They assume that if things aren't moving loudly, nothing is happening. But a seed grows in darkness before it ever breaks the surface. Roots deepen before branches appear. Progress is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. That's the nature of quiet growth. It builds foundations that can withstand storms. You don't need to prove your progress to anyone. You don't need to explain the internal work you're doing. You don't owe the world an update every time you evolve. Let your life speak for itself. Let the way you carry yourself reflect the transformation. Let your energy shift without announcing it. There's a reason why personal growth often feels lonely. It's because you're outgrowing people, patterns, and environments that once felt normal. And that transition is uncomfortable, but it's also necessary. When you're serious about growth, you become more selective. You start protecting your peace. You learn to say no without guilt. You detach without drama. You stop chasing what drains you. And none of that needs to be performed for anyone else. It just needs to be real for you. So embrace the quiet seasons. Don't rush through them. Don't underestimate them. That silence you feel, it's not emptiness. It's preparation. It's the space where your next chapter is forming. It's the place where your strength is being built, not for the spotlight, but for your future. Growth isn't always about big leaps or bold moves. Sometimes it's about the small shifts, the quiet choices, the consistent effort behind the scenes. That's where the real work is done. That's where the real change happens. Not in the noise, but in the stillness. Not in the crowd, but in the quiet. We live in a world obsessed with documenting the process. Every step of every journey is filmed, posted, captioned, and explained. We've been taught that if we don't show our progress, it doesn't count. That if others can't see the work, it must not be happening. But here's the truth. Your process doesn't need to be public to be powerful. Let your results speak. Let your life be the proof. The process is for you. The results are what others will see. The need to constantly explain your process, to tell people how hard you're working, what you're sacrificing, and how much you've changed, often comes from insecurity. We want others to acknowledge our effort because we're afraid they won't understand it otherwise. But the reality is, most people won't understand your journey. Even